is what's your position on farmland preservation, which is our only healthy industry in this state. Although they're talking about the state, we don't know what's going on here in Modesto. So we'll let Bill, why don't you start on that one?
Actually, finally, I'm a builder. Somebody asked me what I think about farmland preservation. Farmland preservation is key to our community. We have a heritage in our community that's called agriculture. If you look back at the founding of this area, we were founded through agriculture, and it's important to preserve it. Now, being a builder, I also recognize there's a very important thing that every one of us in here has. That's a place to live. Good shelter is important. So how do you balance it? You direct, particularly residential, because that's the most controversial, direct it to those areas that are low productive, soiled areas, not the best locations or whatever, but we have to get the transportation. Let residential go in those areas. Other things like businesses, they have special needs and should have special dispensation, I would say, because of transportation corridors. You have to be on a transportation corridor if you have a business that makes something that's going to be shipped. So we have to allow some flexibility within farmland preservation. Now, farmland preservation doesn't mean you have to tax the builder, which then passes that cost on to a homeowner and allows a homeowner a requirement of having to pay for costly subsidies that come out of some of the rules that are in farmland preservation now. There's other ways to do it, and that's directing growth to those areas that are not prime areas, and then preserve the other. Just do it by fiat. No more crossing this ground. It's forever. It's got good soil, has good irrigation. The irrigation comes from the surface, and it's important. Good drainage. That's important, and we need to preserve it. And I'm all for it also.
Well, about 4 years ago, 8 years ago, one of the reasons I ran for office is because I really believe we need to preserve our farmland, and I don't want to end up looking like San Fernando Valley in LA. In the 50s, it was said we will always have plenty of farmland in LA. And look at it today; it's all taken over. That is one of the most prime areas of farmland in the nation before it got covered up. So one of the things I did 4 years ago is I met with the Farmland Working Group. I met with developers, and these are all different meetings, so we didn't have any fights. So that's a joke. You can laugh, okay. And also farmland and the farmers. And what I proposed was urban growth limits. Now, we need to grow towards the lesser soils to the east in Modesto. So we need to stop growing on the west. If we put an urban growth limit there, carve out the above Kernan between Dale and McHenry, and we're already working on that as part of what Garrett mentioned earlier about getting some more land that is for jobs over to the east, to the west of Dale Road on Kernan. So we have met. I've been meeting with people over the course of time. Where now that's into our economic development committee, where we're talking about urban growth limits. And the reason urban growth limits are so important is because if we don't go to the vote of the people, the next bunch of politicians that are in the city council can change the policy. It has to go to the people so that policy can't be, that line can't be moved. So if we're able to basically allow the city to be able to grow to the east and have a boundary on the south, a boundary on the north, and a boundary on the west, it's going to preserve farmland. Now, part of that farmland preservation is the ag easements, which are part of law, and they need to be in there. I think the urban growth limits are probably the best solution because it really does say you cannot grow past this line. The other part of this whole idea is we need to figure out in our community how to embrace agriculture, because most of us live in the city and we don't really know what agriculture is about. But if it's going to stay, which that I just said is going to say ag is going to be here and we're going to really embrace it. We need to learn what ag is about, and I think there's some ideas that we have that we're going to come forward with that are going to help us understand that our ag producers here in this valley produce the premier products for the world. And once we do that, I think it'll help us to understand why we've preserved ag, and then also help them to be able to do their job without being up against, the whole idea of the city continue to creep out into their farmland.
My family were farmers before the turn of the century here. They helped work on the MID canal system, so I have a long history in understanding farming. Farming is our only true industry here. There's some small ones, but all of the money, if we want New York dollars to come in here and then we trade them around, the only way we get them in here is through industry. And the industry that brings them in is ag. Ag is our core of what we are. And if we pave over our farmland, we lose our ability to really have a vibrant economy here. So farmland has to be number one here. I have been the one that not only looked at that, but also moved forward plans to take the county out of the ability to build on that farmland and leave it to the cities. The cities now have to ensure that we don't go creeping out, and I have lots of plans to do that. I'm no longer on the EDC committee. If I was, I can tell you that there'd be an urban growth boundary vote on this coming ballot. Since I'm not on there, the people that are should be putting it on the ballot for November so that we can ensure that we put that line in the sand and that we don't cross it.
Thank you, Garrett. One more question, and this is finally the last one. However, I have one point to make with Brad here. He mentioned the San Fernando Valley. Well, I happen to be raised in the San Fernando